start streaming. Okay, and so we're back with the YouTube video is streaming and live, and that's all good. And right, so the number game, a Dutch game for trying to do this clever teaching math thing. Right, okay.
Yeah.
So,
then I'm going to present our cognitive analysis of educational games, the number game. First, I'm going to look a little bit in the article's title and the abstract. So, the title, it's not the best. It's quite ambiguous in the term cognitive analysis. What does that mean? I guess that would depend upon the individual's opinion of the word or experience with it. But in this case, he means to look at the heuristic approach he is using in the article. Or in this, in extent, he means forward heuristics or backwards heuristic for this article, and different approaches found in his results. Yeah, that cognitive analysis, that could be like, are you fit for duty or something? It's very wide. So, yeah, the abstract, on the other hand, I would say is better, since it represents the article actually quite well, I would say. It goes through everything from the flow of the game to NP problems, problems which can't be solved with a simple equation. And then again it goes, includes some of his results too. That, and the subject area of the research is the psychometric perspective playing the game. So it's a bit different perspective as opposed to a Dragon Box game, since he doesn't look how well it actually teaches the content. It just looks how players solve the problems. So if this is a good game in that regard, the article gives no insight into it, but that was not his focus either. He explicitly states that disclaimer somewhere in the article. So yeah, misinvestigating heuristics used to solve the number game puzzles. And there's a big focus on forward and backwards heuristics in the article. He mentions one related work that is a game. That's the 24 game. It's basically the same concept, but the target number you're trying to reach in the game is fixed to 24. There's been some research on that game, and I believe it's said that that game improved arithmetics for the players in some regards. Yeah, but I think the article is a bit short in its theory section, and it could have done a better job. There must be more math games that are relevant to this this analysis.
so the Science Centre, if you've been down to the Science Centre here, it actually has this game, not the 24 game, it has a target number, and you have like a large selection of numbers, and you can put them into the different multiplying two numbers to get to a big number. So yeah, you're trying to do this kind of thing. So it is a relatively common kind of game to play around numbers. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, so forward and backward heuristics. The article it looks into forward heuristics very much. The idea about forward heuristics is that you go about it by selecting the biggest numbers first, and you usually take the biggest one, and then you go about the second biggest, and try to work out the approach to reach the target number from there. And this is illustrated in some of the article's tables. And then again, backward heuristics. That's you're sort of reverse engineering yourself to the solution from the target number. Like if you have a number and try to divide by one of the other numbers, you continue going on in that approach. And the article also discusses the potential that some might have used a combination of the two, like first dividing by some number and then using forward heuristics by selecting bigger number to work your way to the solution. So yeah, the number game. Should probably put this a little bit further in the front, but it's a simple math game intended to teach children to solve NP-complete problems. Yeah, and you receive a task where you have 2 to 5 numbers, and yeah, maybe not all, but some will be needed for solution, and you will also have to use 2 to 4 math operators. Yeah, the common plus, minus, multiply, and divide operators. So
and there are variants of this game as well. So there's one in a game show where you're given 5 numbers, and you can use whatever operators you like, but you can only use operators. So you've got to insert operators between those numbers to use those numbers to get to your answer. So yeah, so you don't, and sometimes you have to use all of the numbers. Sometimes you can use any set of the numbers. So there are variants with constraints. And yeah, how many operators and those sort of things. So there are TV game shows that also do this model.
So it would be fun to introduce the modulus operator.
Yes.
Yeah, repeatability of the study. There is some problems with repeatability, since the author actually is part of the company that created the game. He is the he's the scientific founder of the company that created the game. So I detect a certain bias. Yeah, and did he disclose that bias? No.
No.
That's even worse.
Yes.
So yeah, and just to contribute to the fact that he cited himself 9 times in the article. That's equivalent to 40% of the sightings.
Again, so then I'm glad you found the potential problem with someone doing research on their own invention and then citing themselves a lot and being really enthusiastic. How many of you noticed that he was involved in the company? Did you notice?
Someone told me.
So the opponent noticed that he was involved. So you've already undercut one of your opponents. Going but just like, so if you just read this on the surface level, right, you would get the impression, oh well, this really works really well. It's got good evidence, but it's when you dig and you go, wait a minute. So understanding that sometimes just taking published papers on face value is not necessarily a great idea, right? And again, like when this is published, did the reviewers dig and decide, wait a minute, you've got an undisclosed conflict of interest here? Or did they just scan it lightly, not do the additional reading? So yeah, with this published paper, it's a potential problem. Potential. It doesn't always need to just because you could be biased doesn't mean you are biased, but it certainly leaves you open to that attack.
Yeah. And as for repeatability of study, the author, since he's part of the company, might have access to data other researchers would never get access to. But yeah, if they get access to data, it should be possible to replicate study, although it will probably be very hard, since parts of the work they've done is built on previous works he has done, and I refer back to that. That's in regards to the scoring system they used for the problems. And I looked into one of the articles, and that has an extreme focus on mathematics. It has equations that, yeah, you wish you've never seen them before.
So you're glad I didn't give you that paper to be presenting.
So look at page 627, you could pass this around perhaps.
Right. Yes. So the simple formula for a number calculation of how you do scoring.
I mean, ELO is still complicated, so.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, if you get around that part, then you should probably be able to replicate the work without problem.
Mhm.
It might be some bumps in the road having to try to understand all the parts in an article, and the process they went through is kind of all over the place. You have to read it quite thorough, I would say. Articles normally have a separate part where you specify the entire procedure. This one has one paragraph where it does that.
Yep.
And you have to work out from the different sections what they did. And the order of the article could definitely be better. So it does not follow the standard IMRAD structure, which is recommended.
It
Yeah.
makes it easier to read when you know what's coming and where it's likely to be, right? And so having something deviate from the standard just makes it harder to follow because you're not certain where you're going to find information. So, yep.
Yeah. And yeah, for one thing, they never use a subsection. Everything is like one heading type. Thus, in one place, they when you look at result, they explain the results, and then the results come in another section. You have like descriptives, all that are extracted from that garden, blah blah blah. And then this looks more like results under paragraph named type of answer analysis.
Yep. So it structurally it's been flattened to
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that might be due to the latex template of the journal.
It's
Since-
unlikely to be a LaTeX template.
Oh,
it's most likely a Word template.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Mostly computer science journals are the only ones you'll find with LaTeX templates. Everyone else uses submit as a Word document.
Okay. Never mind. I was wrong. The journal uses sub headings. It's just the author that's slightly incompetent.
Yeah, petite. Yeah.
Yeah. And then we have the graphs. Does this look readable?
Yeah.
I don't know if
Yeah.
it's-
So they can see it here. I've got it on the side. So
yeah,
the stream.
okay.
Yeah. Yep. So no, those graphs are any time you put two axes. So on the second graph here, which has an axis like an axis on this side and an axis on that side, and has 5 lines in it, knowing which line applies to which axis. Right. So it is like if you're gonna have two axes, and yes, it just even the size and rating, having them divided up here and having them on both sides in one part and not only on one side and the other, and it's gonna
Actually, you have two.
Pointer and
You have two types of values on the right side.
yes.
in the link that you gave us. I don't actually have access to any of those graphs, so I just get to the I get a 403 or unauthorized. Yeah.
Right. So you should be able to get them through the VPN. Yeah, sometimes you guys will have to be on campus or through the VPN to get to these papers because they are through NTNU's access to the journals. So,
Yeah. Actually, on the academia article, my account was flagged for suspicious activity by automated system for some reason.
Okay.
So I got a Dragonbox article from an alternative source.
Oh right. Okay.
Just a little fun fact.
Okay. You're being suspicious for some reason.
Yeah. Well, I don't have the order graph with a bunch of equations on it, vertical.
Yes. Having the individual numbers shown as equations going up Yeah, I'm not entirely sure that that's a great way of showing it.
Yeah, and in addition, it's used red and green. Never a good choice.
Not for colorblind and for visual representations. Yeah. And the problem is he also has circles and triangles. So he's all using a shape rather than just the color. So yeah, quite a few challenges in that representation.
Yeah, and let's see. Statistical analysis seems fine on the other hand, but yeah. Okay, then I'll continue my presentation. That was actually a bit for digression, but it's relevant. Yeah, the usage of game elements in the game. Well, uses coins as a reward for quickly answering problems, and the coins are also lost if the answer is wrong. That was part of his fancy algorithm with all the maths. Yeah, and the coins can be used to buy trophies in the game, and yeah, it is game background to probably provide some immersion to the game. But I have no doubts that the children get really immersed and emotionally attached when playing a game, because I think the game is a bit simple in some regards.
It does very much look like you're doing your homework.
Yeah. So it's not exactly immersed into a fantasy by playing this game.
It doesn't have any of those. No, it doesn't have those elements. Again, it may be good enough, but yeah, it doesn't have the additional engagement elements.
I think it might depend a little bit on the person. If he's like a person who really likes challenges and wants to complete everything, that might be enough. But if they're a bit more less problem oriented.
But it didn't engage you enough to drive you forward, no, to finish all the tasks.
Yeah. So is the conclusion of the paper justified? I actually would say he did justify his conclusion fine. It wasn't a very big conclusion. It was that forward proximity heuristics was the dominant heuristics used in solving his problems. He couldn't find evidence for the backwards heuristics and other approaches. So he is honest with his conclusion, and to provide additional evidence for this forward heuristics conclusion, he did an experiment to eliminate factors like the user interface of the game. I think this was a test where he found, I think it was some college students that did the test on paper or something, and it proved that forward heuristics was dominant there too. And he investigated 24 game to see if forward heuristics was present there as well, and it was, with the addition of some proprietary 24 heuristics. Since the target is fixed, then you devise custom methods for quickly identifying numbers that add up to 24, like 8 times 3 and patterns like that. I guess I covered that. So
okay, thank you. Okay, so Harriet, now you can go forward, go and sit on the opponent's chair, so you've already identified a couple of challenges. So what other questions do you have for this?
Well, since you took half my questions at least.
Yes, so we can also open up to other questions.
So, well, just one fact. So, something I would like to just elaborate a bit more about, because seeing that when reading through these articles, we found that not only that article based on his work, that works based on his work, it's all kind of like a loop or backwards, and own work and own work and own work and own work. So would you say that there could be, and seeing that for some reason 2,000 schools in the Netherlands are using this program now, so could you see, looking at it, would you see that it might be some kind of type of pipe dream, this whole game and all the articles and everything around it?
Well, shouldn't the media already have found out then?
Well,
What? So in the media, the controversy, by pipe dream you mean there could be a whole bunch of schools who are paying for
and assuming that this is great because you have all this wonderful research on
all
it.
this published research on it,
Yeah.
and they're using that to justify why schools should pay money.
Yeah.
And so the contention would be, are those schools paying an inappropriately large amount of money for something that doesn't have a proper peer-reviewed evaluation? Right? And this points very directly to a challenge for serious games and for all research, is that if peer review doesn't stop this guy publishing his own research about his own company, and if he just keeps looking for places to publish it until someone does, because it's reasonably well presented, and he's not disclosing, oh yeah, by the way, this is my own research on my own company, does that then build a body of research that he can point to that is peer reviewed, and then he can make money? Right? So it is like, it's a question of bias and a question of potential conflict of interest. How serious do you guys, the rest of the class, take that potential conflict of interest?
Well, I mean, the game was already shit, so this doesn't make it any better.
Right, so the game.
Yeah.
So this is the author.
Mm-hmm.
He has very many publications, if I find page. So this is just 2016,
Mm-hmm.
2015, 2014, 2013.
And a lot of it is on this game. Or methods used in the game.
Just for reference, how much are you sort of expected to do publications? Let's say here at this school, yearly.
As an academic.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So Norway's expectations are quite low for your for publications. So I think you're expected to have a minimum of one publication point per year. Now, one publication point, if you have multi-authors, you get a fraction of a publication, right? So if there are 3 authors on it, you'd have to have 3 papers that had 3 authors on it for you to accumulate one publication point, right? So, and there are a list of publication channels. Most publication channels for Norway are level 1. There are some at level 2 which give you 3 points per publication. So if you get into specific journals with high, prestigious journal, you get more points for that, right? So, but they get evaluated by a panel every year to work out how prestigious particular journals are.
So this guy is like genius of publications.
Well, not really, because so it depends. So that's in Norway. That's the minimum that you're expected to produce. So you would kind of, on average, be expecting to produce 2 or 3 points, right? If you were research active, right? But in the UK, it could be 5 or 6 papers. Now, what this guy is probably not. Is he at a university? I actually do.
University of Amsterdam.
Yeah, he's the University of Amsterdam. So this level of publication, that's a lot, but you'll see that he's 2nd and 3rd author on most of them. And it depends on how, are you publishing master students' work? Are you publishing work with other people? How long those are, how prestigious they are, what percentage. So you can also salami slice, and you'll get some people who are publishing massive amount. And it depends on how much teaching you do, right? I do too much of this to be publishing a lot, right? But if you were solely doing research, you might be publishing 15, 20 papers a year, right? So a couple of weeks So if you're really pushing hard, but the problem is then of quality, right? So if you're only spending 2 weeks, so you're doing 20 a year, so you're spending 2 weeks per publication. How deep and insightful is that work when you're like turning them over that fast? So how significant are your publications? Yeah, that's another point. But unfortunately, because the way we get measured by publication count, and so people just push out things as often as they can. So.
And he would also reference and build upon a lot of things that he had already found out. Did it?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Yeah. So one
really that much more work for
each new publication. Yeah. So you get a lot of people who do that. What they do is they collect their data, and then they'll present some of the data in one paper, and then get the next bit of data and present in the next paper, and the next bit of data present, and we call that salami slicing.
Yeah.
Rather than taking all the data you collected, analysing the whole thing, finding the most significant thing, and publishing that, you find each bit and segment it off, and then publish about each bit. It's a modern problem, but I think that salami slicing plus conflict of interest plus sales and marketing aspects of it. So there are potentials for him gaming the academic system at this point. Okay, next question.
Well, even though that he didn't really talk about learning, would you say even though he didn't talk about it wasn't a focus, would you say that it's a bit weak in a research paper about serious games, not at all talk about why does this game make people learn anything? Because he only analyzed and spoke about how people solve things, but not how they learn things.
The only reference to learning is that compared to the game 24.
Yes.
So if that's transferable to study, it might be very much learning in the game, but it's a big if.
But he's relying on the referencing.
Yeah.
Right? You guys may have to do that in your master's theses as well, right? So sometimes you won't have evidence yourself for what you're trying to measure, and say, well, they have evidence. I'm saying that works. Your good point there on the 24. Is it transferable to all challenges, or is it something specific about it being a known number that you can then play with? So yeah. Okay. So yes, he agrees. It's not got a lot of learning in it. Okay.
Well, my problem is that he took nearly all
As the defender of the paper, you actually presented a lot of the challenges with the paper as well. Yep. So questions from the rest of you guys. Did you see it as being as bad as these guys said?
Yes.
Okay, good. We got some yeses coming from the audience. Yep. So what other things did you guys notice, or that bothered you? Are there any other?
I couldn't follow it. Like I've written here my notes. I'm just like my original notes was just like game is shit. And also because I actually went and played those. I got way through, and then I asked like, why are you keeping all the fun games in the bonus section? Those are more on the game. And then the last thing I wrote was reread, because I had to reread it to get what he was trying to get at. And like for the other article, I actually wrote a page of notes while reading it, but going through this one, like I see text here. I don't know what you're really trying to get at.
I can just when Melissa has to talk about that, it was something that I found that for this paper I had to really read it as you, and I had to mark everything. I think I've used 4 different colors in my PDF to find it. So this is that, and this is that, and this is that. And what I found, so I guess I could say that was a bit negative because you didn't bring it up, I think, in the structure, was that where on earth did he put his hypothesis? Because he put that as part of the text. It was more or less hidden, so you had to, I hypothesize, and my hypothesis is just part of the text, so it was nearly impossible to find.
Very difficult to refer back to.
Yeah, so I think the first time we found it was that the discussion, or
No, it's under how do humans
Yeah.
solve the
Yeah.
number problem.
yeah. But I think yes, but I mean I think we, because when we read through it the first time, I think we didn't see it there. I think we saw it under the discussion that my hypothesis is supported and something I would went to tell hypothesis.
Yeah.
And then you had to reread it back, and then you found it under chapter 4 and.
So
So, in general, so now for the last 10 minutes of the session, so when we compare these two papers, okay, so one of the reasons why we do two papers in a session is so that we can compare them, right, that are working in similar areas. So this is maths education and playing with numbers versus doing algebra, but similar in the maths education. So what can you guys take from comparing these two papers? What would you take into writing your own articles?
well, for one thing, I would use better headings.
So headings are important. That's a
Yeah.
good thing. Yep. Structure is important. So we keep telling you guys to think about structure and stuff. This is partly why, right? Because we need to show you some examples of how it can be difficult when they're written like this, right? Because one of the problems is if we only ever show you lots of good examples, you don't see what we mean by a bad example, or one that you have to reread multiple times. And as you said in PMS, the fact that the first article you're able to read and take notes because you weren't having to fight the structure, whereas the second article you're constantly fighting structure, so you have no way of hanging your thoughts on the structure of the paper itself. So, yep.
And for one thing, I would split this up into multiple figures and try to present it more clearly. And the caption is one caption under an entire thing. It should have.
It would be
captions
easier
underneath.
if you actually tried to link captions together. Yeah. So for someone who's like trying to make a game, which is usually a visual representation of something, that indicates that the skills of visual representation isn't necessarily fantastic. So what, I mean, in terms of analysis and presenting data, so the comparisons of the two papers?
I would say that, so for the first paper, like what you discussed was to not get so, not constant, but get so sure on your data that they can be translated to everything, rather than think about maybe I should try and do this again and with a bigger sample and a different population and stuff like that. Think about, not think that, oh, this is a good result, that should work for everything.
Yeah, so there in that first article there is overreach in the conclusions, right? And it's clear that, you know, we did this one study on these two, and so we should change the whole curriculum. It's kind of, whoa, whoa, back there a little bit. And in the second one, I think you have, there are quite a few issues around the potential conflict of interest of him trying to prove that this is a good tool for understanding how people learn or understanding how people solve problems, and it's using a serious game to analyze the behavior of players, but and in this article he doesn't talk much about the game design aspects, but the games themselves are not really that, they're just points, badges and leaderboards basically, they're just math problems with
There's
stuff.
there's slate calculations with, you know, pretty backgrounds.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that in terms of the playability of Dragon Box versus the number game,
Dragon Box is much better.
as a game.
Yeah, as a game, yes.
As a game.
And I felt that, although I couldn't play much of the other, but I also felt that my first instinct was that the Dragon Box would also be better at learning, or give learning away the not curriculum, but the algebra problems.
I can also mention sort of from the other game when I tried that. So that starts you off super easy and then, you know, adapts, but that adaptation doesn't happen while you're playing the game. So it happens the next time you retry it. And seeing as it's basically just like not teaching you what you're actually doing, but rather just looking at repetitions. Like for me, I struggle with, you know, calculating the large numbers. So obviously I'm doing like super well when it starts you out with, you know, the 1 + 1 sort of thing, and then, you know, you do massively great on that, which you can obviously see because they're, you know, so easy that you can just do some by logic instead of actually doing the arithmetic. So then suddenly you like try to repeat or click on it again, and suddenly you're like presented with this like massive calculations, and you're going like, okay, no, what the fuck do I do now? And then you know you do something wrong, and it doesn't say what you did wrong. It's just no, this wasn't the correct answer. This is the correct answer. I'm like, okay, so how did you end up with the correct answer?
What was the process to get to?
I think also the art style and the sounds and stuff from the Dragon Quest game. When I started playing it, I immediately got a good attitude towards it because it was a nice presentation, and the art style kind of looked like games that I would play on in my free time.
Yeah. So
even before I started the first level, I was already positive to the game.
It doesn't look like it's created on a budget.
Yeah, no. And those chewing sounds when you get the extra points are really satisfying. Yeah. So that's yeah.
So because there have been some effort in polish and some effort into actually making it look reasonable, and an art style that's actually an art style rather than just whichever students were currently available at the time doing whatever graphics we could get them to do at the time. You know, you work at a university, it's one of the things that happens. And so yeah, those become challenges for a game like the number game. Now in terms of being successful, the number game has a lot of schools who are paying for it. So it may work.
State mandated.
State mandated, yeah.
Probably. And they don't know shit what they're buying.
So this is a problem, right? So one of the things and if you were promoting Dragonbox, you would grab papers which show, look how wonderful it's working, right? And you might be tempted not to take the other papers which you read, which showing, well, look, didn't work in this other case, right? So selective advertising of material is also a challenge that we have as academia. So how would you go about solving that, particularly if you were studying this area, right? Because these guys studied this area, found the opponent papers, right? Now for this one, it's hard to find other people doing the same research because it's
all the people in the company doing the research.
It's all proprietary and behind. It's not that this is an open system that other people are using and doing research on. These guys are basically researching it themselves. But for Dragonbox, there are plenty of there's stuff in America and there's stuff here in Norway and there's stuff in Malaysia. So finding those other papers. Right? So how did you find? What was your process of finding the other Dragonbox papers?
Search Dragonbox in Google Scholar.
Yeah, I figured that it's not too hard to find them by doing that. But can you see how important it is to not just trust one paper? And that's also what I want. Although you guys didn't, you just read the Dragonbox paper, and certainly the comparison of these two, the Dragonbox looks even better because it's so much easier to read and so much clearer than the other paper. Right? So if you were sitting on a publication panel, right? If you were publishing the journal of the Serious Game course, and these were two papers that came in as being, hey, we're about serious games, which one would you publish?
Dragonbox.
you'd rank the Dragonbox. Now, but this is having read two, you compare them, right? So as a publishing panel, what you get like 15 ones to read, and the numbers game isn't the worst of them, right? There are a lot of worse ones, and so by comparison, you go, okay, whew, I can actually read. We should publish them, and you become slightly less critical of it in comparison to all of the even worse stuff you're reading.
It's sort of like movies, if you just see shit movies all the time, suddenly you get a mediocre one. That's sort of you're nominating it for an Oscar.
Really good. Yeah. So yeah. So that is a challenge that you guys will also have to find when you start finding papers and reading papers. Do look for the opponent paper, and I'm glad you guys found one of the ones that said, "Oh, we didn't find a good result," and you were able to identify the conflict of interest, right? Because none of you saw. Did you see that? None of you saw that conflict of interest clearly stated anywhere in the paper, right? But you all read the paper. So.
there's an acknowledgement at the end, but that's for something else. That's for a grant or something.
Yes, there's an acknowledgement of grant, but not that, you know, oh, by the way, I own this company, and so anything I say is probably advertising.
I also liked how the notes were sorted. It was like, you know, the acknowledgement and then the solution to one of the questions that came at the first page, and then something on it that was totally unrelated again. I was just like, you know, suddenly comes a point like, solution is 6, and to what?
Yes, you have to manually.
I mean, it didn't help that the last one was numbered wrong in the article as well. So that was numbered 2 twice, so it didn't make any sense.
Yeah, it becomes very difficult to hunt back. So in summary, so next week we have, so in summary, hopefully you found the 2 papers interesting, kind of just to be able to be critical of one of them. Also this hidden thing that he was the author, and the very positive Dragonbox, but not all papers are that positive about Dragonbox. Right? So, but actually, it is a much better game. Though a lot of educational games you'll find are much more like the number game. Right? That's what you'll find mostly they're like that rather than like Dragonbox. So.
But like you said, with I had a very positive attitude because of the sounds and art style, but also that I had read the paper before I played it. So
Yeah.
and I think that was also the reason why I was so positive when
you
I
approached it, because and you could certainly see how a teacher could influence, if they felt that positive towards Dragonbox, they could exude that to their students, and some of their students might pick up on that and say, oh yeah, this is really good.
I also have the opposite effect on the other one, because I went to play the Math Garden, and then you know, I got sort of pissed actually, and then I went to read the article, and perhaps it did that, or I think it affected me that I had just a horrible experience before, you know. Really.
Having played the game, it was horrible, and so you.
Additionally, having to like sign up my mail, etc. I was just like dedicating myself to spam.
Well, you could create a spam Gmail account for this specific purpose.
Yeah, but I didn't feel to use that one either.
Right.
Because that was the one I used.
Right. Yep. Okay, so for next week, we have, let's see, it is C programming. So PMS and Anders, you guys are up for next week, and it's the C programming. And did I give you guys 2 papers, or?
Yeah, it was pointers and coding game.
Yeah, there's pointers and coding game. So I think I gave you those 2. I'll put out the publication. I'll put out the announcement tonight with the links to all of those, and we'll also put them on the IXC site so we can start pushing questions into there. How did you guys feel about the static questions that I had kind of were general questions? Do you think those were reasonable general questions, or would you like to change those general questions for future ones, or do,
I think it was one. I mean that might be just because I didn't get it. Let's see. The unit study. I thought when we ended up was that you thought about what they said. So for instance, the second one was with cognitive and cognitive reasoning and stuff like that.
Yeah. So the unit of study was they're studying cognitive reasoning, and the other one they're studying algebra awareness. So you can, so it's just sort of making sure you know what exactly they're focused on.
Yes. So and I think maybe some of the others like, wait, this is a math game. So what type of game is this? It's a math game. So that's maybe a bit too general, but I don't think that's so much that should be brought up here.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. We can kind of say they lower the priority of unless it's something that, like, if when the title of the abstract doesn't actually say what they're doing, then you might want to ask it. But otherwise, you probably don't need to ask it. Yep. No, that's fair. Any other questions you think we should add to that? Because this format of asking those generic questions is useful because it gives you a way of approaching the paper and some things to think about. You guys are happy with that? Because we can add in more questions, or we can change those questions. But we can take out the unit of study question if you like. No? Okay, so any other thoughts on this as an exercise? So you understand. So hopefully, as you start thinking about potentially making your own games or other serious games, we saw some, like yesterday of the integration project. We were over in Arena. They use
that's a whole bunch of serious game stuff, right? So that could have just as easily been a serious game trip as it was an integration project trip, right? Because those were using game engines to train soldiers, right? So if you wanted to focus on that for this course, that would also be something that would fit quite well in this course. Okay, any other comments, feedback? Nope. Okay, so we'll put you guys out for next week, and we will need to sign. We want to sign some people up for the 20th. Okay, if I don't have volunteers,
Not yet.
not yet. So I will post out an email and I'll ask for volunteers. If I don't get volunteers by tomorrow afternoon, I will tell people who will be on the 20th. Okay. Okay, great. Okay, we'll see you guys. Well, I'll see most of you tomorrow.
Yeah.
Because you get to, I saw you Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. You've got to be bored soon.
I mean, that's why we need